The time is just gone 8:33 a.m. and while there has been a lot of focus on vaccines in South Africa, and we've seen a lot of focus on the part of corporates, large businesses, many South Africans are now raising questions about whether they can introduce mandatory vaccinations for domestic workers, gardeners, and other employees in their home. And to take this discussion further, we joined on the line this morning by labor lawyer and mediator Patrick Deale, talking about domestic workers and people that are employed at home. Patrick, good morning to you and welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thank you for having me on, and good morning to your listeners.
Yes, now let's just talk about employees at home. Now, they are classified as employees. They also have a right to a safe working environment. And it is an obligation on the part of the employer to ensure they're healthy and that they have a safe workplace.
That's absolutely correct. And I think the circumstances relating to the protection against COVID is at home, in the workplace, the domestic workers and their employers, in the home situation. The same principles would apply there as they would apply in any other business situation or any other workplace. So the same principles would apply. And perhaps it's even applied more strictly in the home basis because of the proximity of the workers to the living space of their employers in the home situation.
Yes. Now, Patrick, as far as vaccinations are concerned, now we know this debate is still going on in the country, whether they are mandatory or whether they are not. But looking at employers of people like domestic workers, like gardeners and other employees, can an employer introduce mandatory vaccinations for these employees?
Yes, I think they can. They need to follow, as I say, the same kind of principles and the processes that would apply to other employers in different workplaces, and that is to talk to them about the potential risk that they could impose on members of the employers and their children. Remember, the young children, all sorts of people in houses, and to the extent that they are put at risk by a domestic worker who is not vaccinated and everyone else is vaccinated. And if there is particularly a home where they've taken a view that we will vaccinate and vaccinations are good because they give us protection, then I think that they, as a matter of principle, are entitled to say to their domestic worker, we would like you to fall in line with what we have done to protect ourselves, and we would like you to protect yourself in the same way, so that you can protect us and our children. So, and if the employee says, well, no, I'm not prepared to do that for any reason, then it could be the basis for termination. But obviously, one would need to discuss it more, the reasons why the domestic worker does not want to be vaccinated. And essentially, the reasons could be either just personal choice, personal right, or it could be for a genuine medical reason. And if it's, and so we'll need to separate out the two. So if it's just a choice for religious reasons, for constitutional reasons, or for personal bodily integrity, whatever, if those are the reasons and it does not fit with the safety concerns of the employer and the employer's family or other occupants of the house, then the employer may say, well, look, we can't accommodate you in any way. You can't obviously work from home like other office workers can remotely. And so, if we can't come, if we don't, have you fully vaccinated, we're going to have to move to terminate your services to protect our own safety and of our people, our family, and that would be perfectly legitimate. If, on the other hand, it's for medical reasons, the same kind of process would unfold. But then one would need to look at possible other ways of accommodating that person. So at the end of the day, if a person who has medical conditions and genuinely can't get a vaccination, the end results may be the same, of termination, that the health and the well-being of the family and the employer and any other occupants in the house will take priority over that individual's medical condition or that individual's personal choice not to vaccinate.
Yes, I think, Patrick, what would be interesting to note is looking at the legal consequences, particularly in the case of employees not wanting to be vaccinated without a valid reason, and how the court would actually view this from a legal perspective should an employer terminate the services of the employee.
Yeah, well, the first thing to note is that there is no precedent at the moment. I believe there is a case going towards respect to the Constitutional Court, to get the Constitutional Court to make a call or decision on this thing, to set a precedent. And I think it may be going to the Constitutional Court as a first stop, rather than the traditional going through all of the lower courts and finally get there, because of the time required to get basically a legal precedent on this issue. And that would be helpful. So as things stand, all we can do is use available information and existing fair labor practice processes, dismissal laws, to make a call or a judgment call on what the court could determine is fair or unfair. And on the available evidence, I would venture to say that the overwhelming, in my view, outcome or of evidence and circumstances could be that the court would, the Labour Court that is, or the CCMA for that matter, would endorse dismissals as being fair if the reasons have been for keeping a safe workplace, either at home or in other workplaces, on account of, and by doing that, to terminate the services of a domestic worker or any other employee for not vaccinating. And I think the outcome of those dismissals, on balance, in the absence of a precedent, could be determined, or most likely to be determined, as fair, as things say. After all, this is government policy. All we hear every day is vaccinate, vaccinate, vaccinate. Please hurry up and do it. But public interest is strongly in favor of vaccinations and mandatory vaccinations. It is a national imperative, and which is likely probably become legislated in the new year, the way things are going, as it has been in many companies already in South Africa, notable companies, like universities, like Discovery Health, etc. The trend is firmly on the way towards mandatory vaccination. And so the issue about whether or not a court will decide it will be determined actually by law, that it will be fair to dismiss people for not being vaccinated if it is unsafe for them to work in an environment which could put the health of others at risk.
Patrick, just a thought, what if the situation was reversed where the employer has not vaccinated and the employee has vaccinated? I mean, would there be a case?
I think it's a very interesting proposition. Frankly, I haven't thought of that, but I think that under those circumstances, the employee could put a grievance in, reverse the process and say, look, I'm willing to work, I'm willing to present myself risk-free or as risk-free as possible by being vaccinated, and you as my employer are putting me at risk. So you are creating an unsafe working environment, and it is your duty to keep a safe working environment. So I am not going to report for work. I'm not going to put myself at risk for the time. I will tender my services so long as you provide a safe working environment. Because so long as you don't provide a safe working environment by you getting vaccinated and in the home situation by everyone else getting vaccinated, then although I offer my services, I tender my services, I will not be reporting for duty while those risks are in place. And you have similar situations, for example, where there's an immediate fear and danger of risk in a workplace. Most often you find them in mines where there's a possible rock fall, and or there's a blasting situation that causes a fragile mining route that could damage a ship of workers. And they know about them. They don't go in until it's been rectified because it's unsafe. And they could lay out the complaint and grievance and withhold their labor, still offer their labor, tender their services, but not report for duty until such time as the risk has been eliminated. And the same situation would happen in this reverse situation where the employer does not vaccinate and thereby perpetuate a risk and put them in risk. And so I think it's very possible that that could happen. And for the employee, that wouldn't terminate the contract of employment. The employee would still be entitled to payment of wages or salary or whatever under those conditions. So long as the risk is perpetuated, the employer does nothing about it, knows about it, but does nothing about it, and the employee continues to tender his or her services.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see where all of this ends, Patrick. But for now,
Sure.
thank you very much for your time with us this morning and for providing us an insight with regards to domestic workers, gardeners, and people employed at home and vaccinations. Please take care and please be safe. All the best to you.
My pleasure. You take care too.
Patrick Deale, labor lawyer and mediator. Interesting developments. These are definitely when we're talking about mandatory COVID-19 vaccines for domestic workers and gardeners and other people that are employed in your homes. The time is just gone 8:45. We come back. We will be focusing on 16 days of activism for no violence against women and children.